We are now streaming live on YouTube. This is the state of Georgia versus Jacob Austin Croft, warrant number 2024 WA 80304, 80305, 80306, 80307. All parties are present and have announced ready to proceed. Miss Pitts.
Thank you. Officer Mosby, if you'll turn on your camera and unmute yourself. Yana, one moment. Oh, there we are.
I'm trying to figure out how to turn the camera on. Hold on one second. Okay, got it. Okay.
Okay, all right, we can see you and hear you.
Who's this? Mosby, if you would raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear and affirm that the testimony that you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Okay, you put your hand down. State your name and your agency.
Officer Mosby, Clayton County Police Department.
And how long have you been with Clayton County Police Department?
For 6 months.
Okay, and what is your current assignment?
Sector 1 Uniform Patrol.
Okay, and are you post certified?
Yes, ma'am.
Bringing your attention specifically to July 11th of 2024, were you working in your official capacity at that time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and as a Clayton County Patrol Officer on July 11th of 2024, did you have the occasion to be in the area of Pecan Grove Road?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that located within Clayton County?
Yes, ma'am.
Will you please tell the court what happened in this incident?
So on this date, we were conducting a roadblock, a routine roadblock, in order to assess drivers who are violating any uniform traffic laws. At that point in time, as we were setting up, we observed the individual pull into the driveway of a residence, which was not his. My sergeant approached the male and asked him what was going on. He stated, I believe, that he was doing Uber Eats or DoorDash deliveries. My sergeant observed that the food that I guess he had it didn't appear to have been picked up recently. He continued to talk to the individual. I asked the individual to state his name and date of birth so that I could make sure that he was a valid driver. At which point that he provided his name and date of birth. I advised radio of the information that he provided. She advised that the license was suspended for the name and date of birth provided. I then detained the male, put him in the back seat of my vehicle. You just wanted the initial as to how we made contact with him.
Let me ask you this, the name and date of birth that he provided, at some point during your investigation, did you learn whether or not the initial name and or date of birth were accurate?
So the initial name and date of birth provided, when I got back to my vehicle and was able to run the information myself, I observed that the name and date of birth that he provided came back to a white person. I asked him, how could this be him? And he stated, you don't got S-H-I-T to say to me, B-I-T-C-H.
Okay. And after that transaction, did you at some point during your investigation learn that in fact the name and date of birth that he provided was not who he claimed to be?
Yes, when we got him into the transport van, intending to take him to Clayton County Jail, he then did provide the correct name and date of birth to the sergeant that was operating the transport van.
Okay, and were you able to, based on the correct name and date of birth, verify that it was in fact Jacob Croft that you were having this interaction with?
Yes, I checked that information on NCIC and found that the name and date of birth, as well as the picture attached, was Jacob Croft.
Okay, and so I want to, was there anyone else in the car with Mr. Croft?
No.
Okay, and the car was parked in the location the car was parked. Did it have the right to be there based on the ownership of the home?
No, he even stated he didn't live there. He didn't know anyone who resided at that location.
Okay, was it your intent at that point to have the car towed?
Yes, we planned on towing the vehicle until we got in touch with the owner of the vehicle and she was able to come retrieve the vehicle.
Okay, and in preparation for the vehicle being towed, did you do any kind of inventory search?
Yes, I began an inventory search, and at which point I did locate a black satchel or small male's purse, which I noticed the odor of marijuana inside of the bag. I asked Mr. Croft if it belonged to him, as I did see a debit card inside, which had the name Jacob Croft on it. I didn't know that that was his name at that time, so I simply asked him if it belonged to him. He stated no. And then when I opened the bag, I did locate a green leafy substance inside of the bag.
Okay, and did you locate anything else inside of the bag?
Yes, I also located a small firearm inside of the bag.
Okay, and you stated that you did find some form of fashion of identification inside of that satchel?
Yes, there was a credit/debit card that did have the name Jacob Croft on it.
Okay, and did you take both the firearm and the green leafy substance into evidence?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And was the vehicle ultimately towed?
No, the vehicle was taken into possession by the owner of the vehicle who responded to the location to retrieve her vehicle.
Okay. And then thereafter you took warrants, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't have anything further, Judge.
Mr. Rogers?
Thank you. Officer Mosby, you're the lead on this case?
I'm sorry.
Are you the lead on this case?
Yes, sir.
And everything that you just discussed, is that all captured on body cam?
Yes, sir.
And so if I understood you correctly on direct, you said that, I guess while you and maybe other officers were at a roadblock, that you saw Mr. Croft pull into a residence that is not his. Is that
That's
correct? How did y'all know it wasn't his residence before you spoke to him?
So the thing that I was actually sitting up the street a little bit farther than my sergeant. So my sergeant observed him basically proceeding down the street and then suddenly making a turn into a residence. My sergeant asked, I'm not sure if it was based on the expired registration decal on the back, because we were conducting a roadblock looking for violators of offenses such as that or no insurance. He approached the male based on the registration sticker being expired of the vehicle he was operating.
And so but eventually you are, well, let me ask, I guess, because if I understand correctly, the registration was indeed valid on the vehicle.
It was expired as per the sticker. However, when you run it, I believe it was found to be valid.
Okay, so then the answer is yes, the registration was valid on the vehicle.
It didn't appear to be valid. However, after further investigation, it was found to be valid. But you wouldn't have known that by looking at the registration sticker, which was expired.
Okay. Did anybody run the registration before making contact?
No, usually what you do is if you're initiating a traffic stop, you advise dispatch and then you make contact with the individual and then they inform you that it's valid.
So just so I'm clear, you're saying that people get pulled over about registration, and then after you pull them over, that's when you find out whether or not the registration is actually valid?
It's possible, unless you're driving and you're able to operate your computer and type in the tag and then find out on your own that it is valid. However, either way, if you're displaying an improper validation sticker, that is a traffic offense. You have to update your registration sticker every year.
And so once you make contact with him, and he says that he's there for, I believe he said it was for DoorDash, is that correct?
That's correct.
So then
Or Uber
when,
Eats, one or the other.
okay. And so so when does it go from the issue about the DoorDash and the registration to the arrest and the inventory search? At what point does that happen?
So I can't speak for the initial contact, as the initial contact was made by my sergeant. I just happened to be parked further in front of my sergeant, so I observed that he was making contact with an individual. I made myself present for the purpose of assisting my sergeant. As we were speaking with the individual, I asked for him to identify himself because I like to know who I'm speaking with. that's where I came in. So my purpose was just to identify him. I asked him if he had a driver's license on him. He said he did not. I asked him for his name and date of birth, which I wrote down on my notepad. At which point he provided a false name and date of birth, which the individual whose name and date of birth he provided, which I gave to dispatch, was a suspended license. At that point, I detained him.
And just so I'm clear, so you're saying basically when the name that he gave you came back with a suspended license, that's why he was put in the handcuffs?
Initially, yes, sir.
And if I understand correctly, the vehicle is not Mr. Cross, correct?
That's correct.
And as far as what's alleged to be marijuana, did you all conduct any sort of field test or anything on that?
I'm sorry, repeat that?
I say as it relates to what is being alleged as marijuana, was any sort of field test conducted?
Oh, no, sir.
Do you have any sort of specialized training in identifying plants or anything?
I have taken several drug identification courses through Georgia Post, yes, sir.
What's the process for identifying marijuana? Like, what would be step one in that process?
For the purpose of this search, I did notice the odor of it, which I'm familiar with through my knowledge, training, and experience, 4 years of law enforcement, policing. And in addition, based on the appearance, which I'm also familiar with through my knowledge, training, and experience.
Okay. So based on your knowledge, training, and experience, you're aware that hemp is a substance that's lawful in Georgia?
Yes, sir. I'm clear.
And correct me if I'm wrong, or I guess I'll ask about your understanding. Marijuana and hemp are both cannabis, correct?
If that's your understanding, then sure.
Right, I'm asking, do you know that?
Yes, sir.
And so then what would be the training that you received in distinguishing between the two substances? Well, actually, before we jump into that, I'm not even gonna cut you off. I'm sorry, let me ask a better question. What is the difference between the two?
I can't speak on that, sir.
No further questions, John.
All right, any redirect?
Yeah, Sharon, just one question. Officer Mosby, the substance that you determined based on your knowledge, skill, and experience at this juncture to be marijuana was the weight more or less than an ounce?
I'm sorry, ma'am. Can you repeat that?
Yes, the substance that you identified as potentially being marijuana, was it more or less than the weight more or less than an ounce?
If I'm not mistaken in this case, I can't even remember. I would have to refer to my notes, ma'am.
If your notes have it as possession of more than an ounce, would that be reflective of
It would
what
be
you
more than an
believe?
ounce. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
I
Nothing-
did. I weighed it on scene using his digital scale that he also has in his bag.
Okay, all right.
Okay,
Nothing further.
Okay, any recross based on that, Mr. Rogers?
Just argument, John.
Okay, all right. Ms.
Still
Pitts, any more?
no more evidence from the state, Your Honor.
Okay. Any evidence on behalf of the defendant?
No, ma'am, just argument.
Okay, Ms. Pitts, are you waiving your right to open your closing statement?
Correct, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Rogers?
Judge, thank you. Judge, I'll be asking for a dismissal of both the marijuana charge and as far as I can tell, the firearm charge is related to the marijuana charge, essentially possession during the commission of a felony. The first issue I would say is that, as also testified to, and I don't think it's particular to this, but to this officer, so it's not about singling her out. But the officer is aware that there's a substance that is called marijuana. Another one is called hemp. They're both cannabis. So the officer's not able to tell us what the difference is between the two. But she is aware that one of them is lawful. If her agency or whoever's doing the training hasn't given them any way to discern between a legal substance and an illegal substance, then I'm not sure how they can reliably or credibly make any sort of assertion about that. For those reasons, John, the fact that that one plan is being called by two names, and one is unlawful and one is lawful, but nobody's been able to distinguish what makes one lawful, number one, or how to identify one versus the other. I would argue that there's no basis for probable cause at this point. I would ask that both charges be dismissed for lack of probable cause. I would submit I guess it would be I would submit on the charges as related to, I believe it was false name. Just want to make sure that covers all of our bases.
And driving on a suspended license.
I would submit on a suspended license also.
Okay. All right, Ms. Pitts.
Your Honor, the state would submit that proof beyond a reasonable doubt of the of it being the marijuana, the illegal marijuana is not at this juncture. I believe that the officer testified that she had done some drug identification coursework, and that based on her knowledge, skill, and experience, she made a determination that this was marijuana. She testified that on scene, she weighed it and it was more than an ounce, and that the defendant, that as well as the firearm were found in a satchel that also included identifying information of the defendant. Therefore, Your Honor, the state believes that we've met our burden for possession of marijuana more than an ounce, as well as possession of a firearm during the commission. Additionally, the testimony is uncontroverted that he was driving with a revoked license and that he gave false information to law enforcement officers. Therefore, Your Honor, the state would submit that each and every one of the counts should be bound over.
The court does find sufficient probable cause for each of the charges. It'll be bound over to the Superior Court. This matter is adjourned. All right. I see